Back at it, Sports Bit Live, Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy, SBR picks. Wednesday, August 29th. College football starts tomorrow. Well, I'll call it officially. We'll go over three of the games this Thursday, and Friday we'll attack all on television. We'll get to that coming up. Local news regarding a book here and being fined 4 times. So a lot to get to rapid fire. We look to stay red hot with the play of the day. I'm at Real Sportsbet on Twitter. He's at Teddy_ covers all the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. The players beat up the books last night. We like that. Bad beats, though. White Sox plus 220. Led 4-2 in the 8th. Yankees in a walk-off. 5-4 final. White Sox blow it. Yankees win 5-4.
Yeah, and look, I mean, when you're a last-place team like Chicago, or I guess they're not, the Royals are in last. When you're a bottom-feeder team like the White Sox, this is what happens. But when you look at what's happening to Philadelphia right now, 6-13 in their last 19 ball games. See them blow that 3-0 lead last night in the 7th, 3-2 in the 9th. They lose that game 5-4. Forget the under. The under 7, tough there. But this is a Phillies team that, I'm not going to say they're falling apart before our eyes, but they're not handling the pressure of a pennant race particularly well right now. Bad beat for Phillies and under bettors last night. They blow another lead.
Well, it was 3-0 in the 7th with Nola cruising, who just shut him out the last time and had won 15-16 at home. And then the bullpen blows it in the 9th inning after you gave up 2 in the 7th. Bad for the books. Red Sox in over, 240 up to 280, and the total steamed up from 9.5 to 10.5. They won 8-7, a walk-off error, and after Kimbrel blew it. Dodgers in over, $2 up to 220, and the total 10.5 up to 11. They won 8-4.
Yeah, I mean, the one mitigating factor for the books is that Boston didn't cover the run line, where even though they got bet up to minus 280, they only won 8-7. Of course, total move there, cash. The total move in the Dodger game. The Dodgers' bats have come alive again, slowed down in that series against the Cardinals. They've woken up ever since. They blast Texas last night. Not the only favorites to cover. The Indians, minus $2 up to minus 220 in a blowout win. The Yankees up to minus 260. They have opened about 230 or so. They, too, didn't cover on the run line, but they got the money for their backers. You bet them straight up. So all that big chalk coming through last night, not a good result for bookmakers. Lots of parlay liability around books catering to recreational bettors on Tuesday.
Yeah, not good. Indians move. Yankees 30-cent move. Padres took money. They were the one dog that won. King Felix pitched well, but they got beat. And as a result, Seattle now 5.5 games behind Oakland for the second wild card. A's now a game and a half back. They win 4-3. Edwin Jackson 9-1 in the under this year. Astros took a 180 up to 230 with that move as they get beat on the day that they get some bad news. Manaea could be out for the year, and Anderson goes on the DL, but they win anyways.
Yeah, and that was an impressive win yesterday for Oakland, given what happened the previous night. They took that 4-0 lead and then got blown off the field by the Astros, given the way that Houston had been playing. And we saw the markets really react to that. A 50-cent move towards the Astros yesterday. The books got to keep all that money. And as Oakland continues their profitable ways, we keep saying, Paulie, some point this A's run's going to stop. At some point this A's run's going to stop. We want to play the day winner going against Oakland on Monday. Glad we didn't ride that again yesterday, as the A's ended up being the right side, and the Astros ended up being a very bad bet for the many bettors who were on them.
Well, see how they do now. They're throwing that with Montas, Megden, and Bassett now in the rotation. The next 7 games today, against Seattle and the Yankees. Local story. They used to be Cantor. They changed their name because of the bad PR. They're now CG Technology. They operate books for the M, Hard Rock, Trop, Cosmo, Venetian, Palazzo, Palms, and Silverton. They were accused of taking wages. I don't think accused. They turned themselves in, taking wages from outside the state, taking bets after events had concluded, incorrect payouts. By my math, it's the 4th time they've been fined. At least they wanted to settle it with a fine. And the Gaming Commission said, no, you're not going to get any points for turning yourself in. You're supposed to do that anyways. And, what happens if all these books shut down and they take away their license? The money quote from the female on the commission was, we've called you into the principal's office 3 times now. At what point do we send you back into the classroom?
I mean, look, the quotes coming from the Gaming Commission are downright scary for CG Technology. And remember, This isn't a minor player. This is Wall Street money that came to Las Vegas, that built out all of these sports books, that basically started in-game wagering in Nevada. This is not a second-tier sports book. And the fact that we're seeing quotes like this from Gaming Commissioner John Moran, quote, "For me, this isn't a fine issue. It's a revocation issue," meaning their license. "I can't think of a more egregious ongoing pattern of violations. If there was a hearing in the future, I would be leaning towards revocation, not a fine." He said the fine didn't even cover the state's cost of the investigation, which he put at about $1 million. The Gaming Commission Chairman, Tony Alamo, "I have zero appetite moving forward on this agreement." Quote, "The country is watching. Sports betting has become front page, and it's a big deal. We are the gold standard." Where we're seeing the leagues try to muscle out Nevada and Nevada's data, this is a big deal for the state. Make no mistake about it. I do not expect CG to get hit with another slap on the wrist. $250,000 fine, not enough. They could see the license suspended, which frankly would put some real issues when it comes to all the sports books they run in Las Vegas, Paulie. We don't know how that would turn out. We don't know what those casinos would do if Canner was no longer allowed to take bets.
Right. You shut down those books, and what happens to all the future bets? That would be a madhouse. Here we go. College football's here. Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Tomorrow night, 5 o'clock Pacific on ESPN. Purdue against Northwestern. Northwestern opened 2. Then Purdue got up to 2.5 and now down to 1.5. The total's 51, and that's based on the quote in a report on the Chicago Sun-Times on Thorson, who got hurt his knee, had to have surgery in the bowl game against Kentucky, that if you watch practice lately, you wouldn't even notice that he had surgery, and the kid's been terrific and doesn't show any ill effects of the surgery or that he's limping around. It seems to be, although we can't get an official report, he's supposed to go, but nothing 100% saying he's going to play yet.
Exactly, and that's what the betting markets have reacted to. This line actually was sitting at 3.5 for a good portion of the summer, and it looked high. Yeah. It smelled high. And, of course, now we've seen that line crash. What's causing the wise guy money on Northwestern? One guy. We're talking Clayton Thorson's not a second-tier talent. He's a guy who started 39 games at the college level already. He's going to go, I don't know if he's going to go day 1 in the NFL draft next year. He'll go day 2 if he doesn't go day 1. And when you talk about that report from the Chicago Tribune, quote, 7.5 months after getting his right knee reconstructed, the quarterback looked sharp. The injury prompted him to re-examine his mechanics, and some now believe he has more zip on the ball. Thorson got heavy reps with the ones at practice, and observers expect him to suit up for the season opener at Purdue. And, of course, it's not just Thorson. He's got his top 2 wideouts from last year, back, Flynn Nagel and Ben Skoranek. And, of course, it's an offense that, they lost Justin Jackson, who was a monster running back, but the sophomore Jeremy Larkin will be just fine filling in his shoes. And, of course, defensively, Northwestern, the defensive line is the strength of that team. When you look at the Wildcats on the defense side of the football, Joe Gaziano, he'll be drafted as well. 12.5 tackles first loss, 4 forced fumbles, 9 sacks, and 12 QB hurries. He led the team by margin in those last 2 categories and could be a beast for Purdue's offensive line to deal with.
Yep, thanks for the correction. We gave out Northwestern plus 3.5 when we did the preview with Rob Vino, and Rob Vino was down on Purdue because, quotes, Brom not that high on his team, and he's an excellent coach. They were 7-6 last year, big 4-win improvement. And for 2016, they were 117th the previous year on defense. Then they went to 24th last year, a big turnaround there. But reading the local papers, the other day, Brom said they had the worst practice they've ever had. Horrible practice. Not good, just a couple days out from the game. So juicy middle if you got to the party early, and now money coming in on Northwestern. And Fitzgerald is an excellent coach. This was a 10-win team last year with Northwestern.
Sure, and it was a Northwestern team that their offensive line was a disaster for the first portion of the campaign last year, and they kind of put it together over the second half. They've certainly owned this series. Northwestern closed out last year with 8 straight wins. 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread in the last 4 meetings with Purdue. They won the last 4 games by an average margin of more than 17 points per game, and that defense has held Purdue to 17 or less in each of those contests. The Wildcats certainly have been good in this point spread role. How about 10-1 against the number on the road against Big 12 foes, Big 10 foes since the midway point of 2015. And we talked about that Purdue defense that went from 117th in scoring defense down to 24th in Nick Holt's first year as defense coordinator. Worth noting that they lost 8 guys who saw significant action on defense, including both starting cornerbacks in the offseason.
All right, to Friday now. Paulie and Teddy, Sports Bet, Betting Insight today, SBR picks, 3 o'clock Pacific, CBS College Sports. Syracuse opened 1 early at the South Point. They got up to 6. It's now 5.5 and 65 at Western Michigan. Back-to-back 4-8 seasons for Babers. Injuries have been a big problem the last couple of years. They shocked the world, and beat Clemson as a 24-point dog at home last year, and also close against NC State and some other close calls. But the big story has been injuries with Babers so far.
Yeah, I mean, this team's been riddled with injuries in each of Babers' first 2 years on the job, and that's a big part of the reason why they went 4-8 and 4-8. Last year, they were 4-3 and then lost their last 5 after quarterback Dungy got hurt. When you look at Babers' quote, he speaks volumes about what he's expecting. Quote, "This is the first time I've ever had a year 3 anywhere. So this is new ground for me as well. But I think just having a better understanding of what's going on in the conference, having a better understanding of the 107 guys in the room, knowing what their hot buttons are, knowing how to push them, knowing which ones to push and which ones not to push, and just having a lot more camaraderie with the family. I think that everybody's headed in the right direction. I think there's more of our type of guys in the room than before, and I think it's going to pay off for us in the long run." I mean, there's certainly some positive signs for Syracuse. They've shown, as you mentioned, they beat Clemson last year. They took NC State and Miami and Florida State all to the wire. They lost all 3. They lost to Middle Tennessee. They had a bunch of losses that they probably shouldn't have had. But Syracuse, one thing that Syracuse is going to do, we know they're going to do. They're going to push the pace. Babers wants to run pace, and that may be a big problem considering Western Michigan's defensive losses.
Get back to this one coming up. How things have changed. There's 10 games Thursday and Friday. All 10 of them are on television, including this one. Followed the doubleheader following Syracuse on CBS College Sports. Colorado State from Denver. Colorado 7.5, 65.5 the total. Colorado State played Saturday at home and lost as a 17-point favorite outright to Hawaii and gave up 43 points. McDonald carved them up with the run-and-shoot offense. Carter Samuels did throw for 537 yards in that game, but at one point, the 17-point favorite trailed 37-7.
Sure, but Colorado head coach Mike McIntyre made it very clear he doesn't want his team to overlook Colorado State, doesn't want his team to look past Colorado State. Remember, they've got a big rivalry game with Nebraska next week. After this, with Colorado State getting slapped around in that opener, here's a quote from McIntyre. "When you dissect the film against Hawaii, Colorado State, drastically got better as it went along. In the second half, CSU played really, really, really well. They are dynamic on offense. They have guys that can run everywhere. The quarterback can throw the deep ball really, really well. I was impressed with their fight and their spirit in the second half coming back." And look, I mean, you're right. Carter Samuels, the grad transfer from Washington, making his debut with the Rams. He set a single-game school record with 537 passing yards. Colorado State finished with 653 yards of offense. And, it's worth noting the offense that they faced. The defense got torched. That offense they faced, they didn't have any film on them. It was something brand new that Rolovich had put in for Colorado. It's not like this defense is going to go in and face something that they haven't seen on film before, like what happened last week.
All right, one more. This is Friday night, Fox Sports 1, revenge for Stanford. Stanford is 14-49 at home against San Diego State. Last year in San Diego, the Aztecs upset Stanford and got the big win at home. And now no classes, so that's going to be the case the first couple of games. They don't get a lot of fan support to begin with, so keep that in mind in a couple weeks when they host USC, that the students won't be there as well. And Bryce Love, all the hype, they think they found their quarterback with Costello.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's talk about last year's meeting because it was a tight game. And here we're looking at a point spread that is a 2-touchdown point spread. It is a situation last year where It was tight throughout. San Diego State trailed 17-13, just under 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. All of a sudden, the lights went out at Jack Murphy Stadium. There was a delay. After the lights finally went back on, San Diego State drove 42 yards and scored in the 11th play of the drive with less than a minute to play to get the victory. Their first win in 36 years over a ranked Power 5 opponent. Certainly something the Cardinal will remember. That being said, San Diego State, more than 41 minutes of possession time in that ball game. Rocky Long's game plan was very clear. Keep it out of Stanford's hands. 10 first downs for the Cardinal. Only 43 plays from scrimmage for the Cardinal. Only 254 yards for the Cardinal. Of course, Bryce Love was a factor in that because he had 2 long TD runs, but the rest of the offense didn't do a whole lot. And Costello, who has been inconsistent, I'll just put it that way. 6'5" junior. I'm not a fan. What do you think of Costello? You're obviously not a fan. I'm not a fan either. His stats are okay.
Yeah, they are good.
Say again?
I wouldn't say they're okay. You got 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's much better than Chris. You don't agree with that?
I think there's hope for Costello. Chris was a little bit of a stiff, no question. He's now a graduate transfer at Tennessee, and boy, he's got some targets to throw to. Stanford, besides Bryce Love, has NFL caliber wide receiver talent, NFL caliber tight end talent. That may be a little bit of a problem for San Diego State, but I worry about the defensive front for the Cardinals. There's been, for the Cardinal, I should say, there's been a significant amount of offseason talent drain, and the front four for David Shaw could be a problem in early season play for Stanford.
If you you're throwing money away if you bet on Love to win the Heisman. McCaffrey had better numbers than Reggie Bush, and I think he had better numbers, challenged Barry Sanders' numbers a couple years ago. He still didn't get the Heisman. People don't stay up and watch college football on the West Coast. It's a disgrace. If McCaffrey didn't get it, they won't give it to Love. And he had 2,100 yards and 19 touchdowns last year. Had a $184 in the game against the Aztecs, a 53 and a 51-yard touchdown run as well. So you're seeing him in some places the favorite, other places, top 3 odds with Tua to win the Heisman. I think you're throwing your money away if you bet Love to win the Heisman in that one, although he's a hell of a back and could do it all in that one. All right, money time. Play of the day. Went through all those games. We'll go through a little preseason tomorrow. There's all those games going on in the NFL and the line movement in a second. Back to Syracuse and Western Michigan. Take it away, Teddy.
Sure. Game number 143, betting number 143. Let's take a look at the Syracuse Orange. You can find a -5.5. I'm even willing to lay 6 with Syracuse at Western. We talked a little bit about Western Michigan's defense. We didn't talk a lot. They had 5 All-MAC players on defense last year. All 5 of those guys, bye-bye. They left in the offseason. That's going to be a problem against a fast-paced offense. The biggest concern for Western Michigan, completely rebuilt defensive line. That's an issue against a team that wants to play with pace. Syracuse, by margin, on the road in Kalamazoo, take the Orange, -5.5. That's our play of the day.
All right, NFL Thursday and more college on Friday, and just see some of these big line moves since these opened at the South Point in Vegas. Oregon opened 26, they're up to 33. Florida State opened pick at 7.5. UCLA opened 20, it's down to 15. That suspension's coming in as well. Arizona State's taking money. Marshall opened 3. Miami of Ohio is now 2.5. The big one is where's that Michigan game? Notre Dame opened 7, and then Michigan got to as high as 1.5 at William Hill. That's pick or 1 the other way after the injury news with the Michigan wide receiver as well. So a lot of movement in Nebraska, 18 up to 24 at William Hill. 98% of the money on Nebraska in that one. 99% of the money on Old Dominion, as they've gone from 3.5 to 7 on the road against Liberty. So we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the crew. Sportsbet, Betting Insight Today. I'm at Real Sportsbet on Twitter. He's at Teddy_covers. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. Low Shack in the Bag coming up next. Full recap with the baseball card tomorrow as well. Talk to you then.